first question here. Why did you decide to run?
Well, I've been a lifelong Odessan. I've always had this desire to run and be of servant to my community. I grew up in the Boy Scouts, and so we constantly as a family were doing projects and giving back and doing what we can to make our community better. As I've grown older, I've known that I wanted to continue to give back. I've been in different nonprofit roles to where I could actually serve the community, and I felt like moving into a position such as the county commissioner would bode well in that desire to want to serve and give back to my community. The catalyst for actually jumping into this race was about a year or so ago. I had reached out to the current Precinct 2 commissioner and got no response at all. Didn't get a thank you for reaching out, didn't get a hello, didn't get anything at all. And I found that to be pretty disheartening. You know, an elected official, specifically on a local level, should reach out and should be available to communicate with. And so that was one piece that made me think, wow, well, maybe we need someone new in there that'll actually reach back out and communicate and be there for its constituents.
Okay. And then my next question would be, what would be your plans if elected?
So first and foremost, I want to communicate. I want to be available to the people of Ector County. You know, when you can't get a hold of your elected officials, when you have an issue or you have questions, that's a problem. And so one thing that I would make sure that I'm doing is communicating. I would be available. I want to hold town halls. There are some commissioners that do that. Precinct 2 commissioner does not. I also want to be available in, you know, a different sort of ways, such as social media. Our current Precinct 2 commissioner is only available on social media when it's election time. If you go back and look at the post, come election season, he's all over Facebook. But outside of that, he's not available, and it's unfortunate. And so first and foremost is communicate and be available. But secondly, my main objective is I want Ector County to have a plan and a vision for the future. We're not planning for 20 years down the road today. We're not planning to make sure that the infrastructure that we need for a vital community is in place. And that's very unfortunate. And so first and foremost, I want to push the court to make sure that we get a plan and a vision in place for the long haul so that we can actually take care of things such as our courthouse, such as our library, such as our roads, such as broadband in our community. We have citizens in West Odessa and South Odessa and beyond that have issues with getting good potable water. And those are things that the County Commissioners Court should be looking at today so that in the future we can continue to grow. We've got big projects such as Nacero coming in, and we're hoping to be able to build on that and bring in more organizations into our community, but without good water, companies aren't going to look at us. And so those infrastructure items are, another piece that we have to be looking at, and I want to make sure we put attention on.
Okay, thank you for that. And then this kind of relates to what you were touching base on, but what issues would you want to fix or maybe improve if elected?
Sure, absolutely. First and foremost, as I mentioned, we have to have a plan to address our courthouse. If you've been in the courthouse recently, you know that there are issues with the elevators. You've heard the stories of the sewage dripping down the walls. You've heard the stories and probably seen some of the videos of the flooding that happens when we get good amounts of rain. Our maintenance crews have worked tirelessly to keep that thing literally afloat, but we've got to make sure that we're addressing it. We're not going to replace that thing tomorrow. It's not going to be probably in a couple years. But if we're not planning on how we're going to replace that courthouse, we've got a problem. Our current commissioner says it's just too divisive of a conversation to have. And I don't think that's okay as an elected official. You've got to be willing to have those conversations and keep pushing the envelope for the things that are necessary for a community to have those vital resources available.
Is there any other issues that you would have in mind that you would say?
Absolutely. So I had mentioned before with broadband. You know, Ector Con has done a lot of work to create a plan to bring high-speed broadband internet access to the entire county. And I believe that the county needs to be at the table when it comes to the broadband infrastructure that needs to take place. You know, just over 23 months ago, we dumped all of our kids out on the internet for school. The pandemic opened our eyes to the fact that there are so many kids in this community that do not have access to good internet, and those children suffered. This is 2022. Ector County is such a prosperous county. We have so many good resources here, and yet our kids can't even get on the internet across the county. And so broadband is an important piece of what I want to work on, and something that I want to make sure that the county's at the table, making sure that we're getting what our students, our kids, our children need.
Thank you for that. And then this is just kind of more, if you were elected, how would you see yourself working with other commissioners in the court?
Sure, absolutely. As a commissioner, I think that we've got to work with one another. I pride myself on being able to work with all kinds of people. I like to surround myself around diversity and people of different backgrounds. And I want to make sure that I can work with those people. I think working with the other commissioners is obviously a vital role within this, but also working with other elected officials as well. We've got to make sure that the court is working with the city council, and the city council and the court are also working with the hospital district and those other elected officials within our community that we need to be able to lean on and go to when we need to accomplish goals for the county.
Again, thank you for that. And starting to wrap up here, what would you say sets you apart?
Well, I think there's a lot that sets me apart. I am obviously the younger candidate in this race. I also am the candidate with the young family. I've got a 5-year-old, and so him being of such a young age is part of my drive for wanting to make sure that Ector County is doing better for young families and better for the next generation, and that we're leaving things better for them. And so having had that experience as a young father, knowing that we need to have vital infrastructure in place so that he can be successful in the future, I think definitely sets me apart from what we have now.
Thank you for that. And then,
Sorry.
no worries. And then just pretty much my final question, and this is kind of where you can say anything we didn't cover or anything you want to say, just or anything that hasn't been mentioned. Just kind of
Sure.
Go for it.
So as I've gotten in this race, I've learned a lot. I have learned where there are certain failings within our current commissioner seat. As I've mentioned, we have a lack of communication. We have a lack of representation. We have a commissioner who's sat on that seat for over 22 years now, since the turn of the century, who's gotten to be complacent in representing the people of Ector County. We have sections of Precinct 2 that are ignored until it's election time. I don't think that's okay. I'm the only candidate in this race that actually lives out in the county and not under the city governance, that doesn't have the city resources. On a daily basis, I live and experience some of the struggles that people out in the county actually experience. And we need to have representation that has a fresh perspective, that's going to bring new ideas to the court, and the energy needed to bring us into the future. Our children deserve better, our neighbors deserve better, and all of Ector County deserves better representation than what we've had for the last 22 years.